This is a project on replacing the fuel lines. It's the second part out of 3 for the air leaks on the fuel line. So for those interested, the first part shows the running of the system before and after when the air was getting into the system. So this just is a very simple sequence of how the airline or the fuel lines were run. For me, at least, on this coach at a Continental 2000 Safari, it was very difficult, if not impossible, to run the lines along the original path, which was to follow the rail along the passenger side and through the compartments and so forth, because the tanks would have to be all taken out in order to get to the bundles that run in the rail and so forth. So it seemed to be the best thing to do to use the driver's side, which had a lot of open access. That's where the bays are easy to get through, and the frame has easy access. So that's what I did. So I started at the front, and the first thing, of course, was to block it, take off the wheel. After blocking it, I use a hydraulic, air-operated hydraulic jack that works really well, and it's quite safe because you can get away from the machine when you're lifting it. Based on the extension line there, you don't have to be underneath it pumping it and fooling around with it. So once it's up and blocked, then I use this easy wrench to break the studs off and so forth. I just put that there because some people might have an interest in it. And here it is with the wheel off, and why you want the wheel off is because a lot of work has to be done in the front of the fuel tank, and the access to those fuel lines is very, very difficult. In fact, I spent a lot of time trying to get the fuel lines off of the tank. The only way to do that would be to drop it, and on this gravel and the time of the year and all the rest of it, I was not going to do that. So what I actually did was to actually cut the fuel line about 18 inches down from where the final fitting would be on the fuel tank, and just put in a barb connection, double barb connection for the new and old fuel line. The old fuel line at that point looked fine. There was nothing really wrong with it. You can see where it was cut here. I tried, like I said, I couldn't do it. Dirt and dust falling in your eyes, and you can't get a hold of the clamps. Whoever put this thing on didn't know what they were doing. They put it on so the clamp was, the only way to take the clamp off would be to take the tank out, because you couldn't get a screwdriver onto it. But, people make mistakes like that, I guess. So what I did was, in the future, should I want to take the tank out and change out an extra little bit of line, I just put a loop of the extra line into the system here, and then protected it with some rubber and strapping, and zip tied it and so forth. I don't think that'll be a problem. Then you can see the line coming through at the front, again, passenger side. And what I used on this, it's the way I did it, so you might do it differently, but I used Lumex, which is that protection for electrical wire. This line is not going to move around. It's not a free moving system. It goes around so many corners and bends, and it's tied up to so much stuff, it's not going to move. But I wanted some protection to make sure there's nothing rubbing on it. The line that I used was relatively inexpensive. The return line was around $1 something a foot and $1.20, and the main line, which was larger, which was a half-inch line inside diameter, was I think $1.75. Now if you buy marine line, it's about $7 or $8 a foot, and I think it's probably heavier and so forth, but I just didn't want to spend that extra money. So I protected it this way. Wherever it went across any kind of opening or corner or whatever, I put this Lumex onto it and then zip tied it. And just more of the same as it runs along through the channels that support the floor and so forth. This is all on the passenger side. So then it runs backwards now across the front and to the driver's side. And of course you want to make sure that you're not going near anything moving, like moving radius arms and so forth, which is what I did. Here it is. This is relatively straightforward. There's a bracket on this coach that holds up the steel propane line and the hydraulic, those orange lines for the slide. So I followed those lines, tie wrap to that, and my reasoning being if anything's going to be hitting it the propane line would be more concerned than these fuel lines. So continuing along the side like that, we got to where the compartment was, the water compartment. I simply drilled 2 holes there, ran it through that, and then on the inside pulled it through. And of course you can see it just vaguely here, or a little bit of it. You can see the black line behind the white. And unfortunately I broke off the fitting to the pump. It had some piece of filter on there that was kind of already broken. That has to be replaced now, but it's not too much of a problem. So I ran through to the other side and then out the back wheel well, and then up and around the frame and so forth into the engine compartment. And here you can see it with the return line pulled off. So the return line stops here. I put a check valve in, which is the next picture, because that had failed, as I explained in the previous video. And the main feed line, which was 1/2 inch, this is 3/8 inside diameter for the return, that goes on and into the service bay and all of the equipment that I put there. So once that was all done, the change was remarkable. It started easily. It seemed to start, it actually started much smoother and ran smoother. So I haven't had it on the road. I don't know what difference it'll make yet, but I know that this check valve at the back was causing a serious problem with how this engine was running, and that's been corrected now. So there it is. The next part I'll do is where I redid the fuel filter system in the service bay, and I added a pump onto that. And right now it doesn't work because there's a check valve or something missing in this base plate. So anyway, I'll cover that in the next presentation I do. This gives you an idea of how to run the line, at least, or an alternative. And the old line was left in place. It wasn't removed. There's no need for it. If it ever has to be used again, it still can be. I don't know why we'd want to. One thing I would note is that the line that I bought is for diesel fuel only. My guess is that what was happening here, why it broke down, is biodegradable diesel fuel stuff started coming out in, after 9/11, quite a bit of it, and that will break down this line. So the marine grade line is good for bio, and it's just standard diesel. I didn't put that in. I figured the other one lasted 20 years, and this might outlast me, so that's why I went this route with it. But that's just a bit of a heads up. So if you're going to do this, you know why this type of line would be chosen. Thank you.